What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to TWR. My name is Tavian, and this is Tavian's World of Reptiles. I hope you are all doing well and taking care of yourselves. So today we have set up the babies, and we ended up feeding them. Oh my god. What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to TWR. My name is Tavian. This is my world of reptiles. I hope you are all doing well and taking care of yourselves. So today we are actually feeding our boas, or we have already fed the boas. I have fed the boas, I decided I thought I was gonna go ahead and record that for y'all, but I am still not really sure where I am standing with my channel and how much feeding videos I want to actually have on my channel. I do have a few. I just don't really want my channel to be too heavy on the feeding videos, just because I'm not really sure where my stance is with that and how it could affect the hobby. So I didn't record the actual strike and all of that, but you will see some little bits of them just like in the process of actually eating their meals today. I did decide to try and feed them frozen thawed because I think that is my preferred feeding is frozen thawed. I'm not sure where Jamal, my friend, is going to be with his snake when it comes to feeding, if he's going to do live or frozen thawed. But I am a strong believer that it's important to be able to have a snake that can be fluent and be willing to take either or. If you have a snake that only eats live, getting it to a point where if you just don't have access to having live animals where you can get to them, then having them be able to accept a frozen thawed is something that I think is super important. And if they eat frozen thawed, and there's a rare chance where you can't find frozen but you can find live, you want that to still be a thing, just so that your snakes can go without missing too many meals or be at any type of health risk. So before going ahead and actually getting her over to Dad whenever he's ready to get her, I decided to go ahead and feed her as well, along with my guy, and I did do frozen thawed. I wasn't sure what they had been feeding before they came here, being that they are only just a little over a month old at this point, and I assume that just to really trigger that feeding responses, a lot of people tend to feed their newborns live just to really kickstart that feeding response. So I can assume that up until they came home with me, that they were eating live rodents. So I wasn't sure how it would go, but they both happily took the frozen thawed rodents, and that was great. So now I know that these ones will take frozen thawed or live, so whatever he chooses to do, I'm sure it'll work out. And what I choose to do is continue to do the frozen thawed, and now I know that it's not going to be a problem. I'm not going to have to go work too hard to get him transitioned off of live, which is really awesome. So yeah, and now that they're all fed and I know that's happening, I did just want to also kind of explore with you guys and talk a little bit about my plans for like a feeding schedule for my little guy. I think there's a lot of information out there when it comes to like how often you should feed your baby boas and so forth and so on. And I think a lot of them are similar in a lot of ways, which is a little bit of tweaking. But I decided I'm going to go ahead and share my plans for how I plan to feed him, how often I plan to feed him, at what size rodents, and all of that. And before I get to that, I do want to just say that, like I said, it's just my plan. This is not some holy Bible you have to follow this same setup. This is just what I'm choosing to do. I've watched a lot of videos, I have read a lot of articles, looked through a lot of forums, I have read books. I've got the Vincent Russo More Complete Guide to Boa Constructors, and I have been reading that and finding different things, really important information in that, and applying it to how I decide to care for my animals. And I've just kind of taken all that information and chopped it down and figured out how it's going to work for me and what works best for me. And so what I'm sharing is just what I have experienced and how it's worked for me. It's been great, and it does not mean that you have to follow this. Something might be a little bit different for you than I'm going to say. So I'm not an expert. I'm not claiming to be an expert, and I'm not saying that this is the absolute how-to when it comes to how you feed your boa constrictors. So that being said, now these guys right now are on pinky rats, and I once upon a time, I feel like in the early part of my years, I feel like almost all of my snakes started at mice and then got to a point where they could get to rats. But at some point in my years, I shifted to trying to do like just like getting them onto rats as soon as possible. I feel like there's definitely more nutritional value in a rat than in a mouse. And of course, that's a snake by snake situation. Sometimes, like, mice are as big as that particular species of snake can even handle, and that's just that. But for a boa, I think rats are the best for them, and if you can get them on rats as soon as possible, then you're gonna be better off in the long run. So I have him on pinky rats right now, and he'll continue to be on rats. I'm just gonna kind of go from pinky rats to just like the larger rat pups and so forth and so on. So right now, while he is still eating pinky rats, and all the way up until he's probably at weaned rats, I will be feeding him once a week. Once he is hitting weaned rats or larger weaned rats for that matter, or just that hitting it small to large, I would be feeding every 2 weeks, and that's just flat rate. If they are eating anything above a small rat up to a large rat, or a small large rat, would be a every 2 week feeding. After that, anything like large rat, jumbo rat, I have not yet have a boa that needs to go into the rabbit stage. I'm sure some people out there do. I have not yet had a boa that large, so jumbo rat has been the largest that I have ever needed to feed. So anything that is eating large and jumbo rats is going to be getting fed once a month, flat out. And if it's a reasonably large jumbo rat, I might even do it every 6 weeks, just because I don't really like their metabolisms aren't super fast, and I really want them, like, their bodies go through a lot of big major changes, which I did a video on, and if I can go back and find that video, I will put a card on it here where I talk about the bodily changes that happen when a snake is feeding and why it's important not to power feed, and all of that. And so with boas, I think there's just this understatement that they can just eat and eat and eat, and which they can. They absolutely will. They'll eat whatever the hell you throw in there, but it doesn't mean that they should be eating that much. And I personally don't agree with just how frequently a lot of people do feed their larger boas. Like, snakes that are eating large or jumbos are getting fed every week sometimes, or every other week, and I think at large and jumbo sizes, or even rabbits, you don't need to be at every other week type of thing. I think it needs a little bit more space in between the feedings. But then again, it also depends on how active that snake is as well. That's always a thing to consider. But in reality, most cases the snakes that I've seen are necessarily are not getting as active of a life as like I might provide for my snakes. I let them out a lot to do a lot of roaming. Anyone that wants to. My boas are not the most active, and big boas just aren't super active. They can be, they absolutely can be, but they're generally not the most active of snakes. They kind of get out and just kind of sit and zone out with you. So generally they don't waste a lot of energy, therefore not needing to have as much food provided for them as frequently. Like I said, unless your snake is really active, then maybe that is different for you. This is my experience with my boas. You might have a different experience. It's all about really kind of paying attention to your boss snake's body, size and how they're doing. And unfortunately, though, with boas, you can power feed them and you won't see the results of that power feeding until like a little bit too late. And by the time you're seeing that fat on the outside, the damage that's happened on the inside has already been done, and you've already lost some years off of that snake's life. And so I just try to avoid even having to do that whole wait till the snake is fat before you pull back the diet. Like, they just don't need it as much. And so based off of all of my research and reading several different people's opinions on how they do their feeding schedules, reading all different forums, reading books, this is just what I've come down to. From pinkies to weaned rats once a week, from weaned rats to larges every 2 weeks, from larges up once a month, or once every 6 weeks, depending on how large the particular meal is. So that's just where I'm at with my boas and how I feed them. As I said, this is not any set anything. You will eventually find something in a more set routine that works for you. It might depend whether you're feeding larger or smaller meals. That might differentiate how your scheduling works from mine. If some people will feed more. If you're doing, for instance, if I think about like Lori over there, who does the snake training. I imagine using small meals to train with those snakes on a more regular basis. It means that she's feeding more frequently than maybe somebody who's not doing something like that, because she's feeding smaller meals in order to do those trainings and stuff like that. So it depends on what you're feeding. If you're feeding larger meals, you can probably push those those meals out a bit more from each other. If you're feeding smaller meals, like just to have a more frequent feeding, you can go way smaller and then feed more frequently. I don't know. It all depends on you and what you're choosing to do. This is what I'm choosing to do. And so it's not really an argument. If you have, opinions, share. I'm definitely want to hear it. I want to hear how you take care of your boas. What is your feeding schedule for your boas as they age, from like little babies, month-old babies like I have, to their adult size when they're eating full-on like large jumbo rats or even rabbits for some people out there. So what is it that you do? This is what I do. But yeah, I just want to talk about that since I was feeding the babies today. I figured I would go ahead and just kind of share that with you and how I go about feeding my boas to make sure that they're growing at a nice, slow, healthy rate. I'm not a breeder. I see no need to like pump them full of food to get them at this massive size in such a quick, short amount of time. Like for some of the breedings I've seen out there, like they're 3-4-year-old like females or males or whatever, breeding size are massive compared to some others that are not being raised to be breeders. And there's a lot that can be said about that, whether that is considered power feeding and whether that can be healthy or not, when it comes to just them being breeders or whatnot. I don't know enough about it to really share all of my opinions on that one, so I'm not gonna touch that too much there. But yeah, so I feel like I'm getting to the point of my videos where I ramble, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this one up. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I hope you got something from it. If you were newer to my channel, I hope you got something that maybe you didn't know before, and if you did know it, I just maybe hope you can at least appreciate how I was able to bring this today. If you have more that maybe you think I should have mentioned, please drop that in the comments so that others can see that and they will get that information and they will get that knowledge from you, and so forth and so on, and spreading that knowledge. So you all take care of yourselves. You love yourselves, love your loved ones, love your reptiles, and you all keep spreading those herbs.